ice has dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down Here. It is a Thursday. It's June 4th. We'll be talking tactics today as well. So if you have a tactical question, whether you are watching live on Twitch, twitch.tv/Soccer Down Here, whether you are listening live on our Soccer Down Here app, whether you're listening at soccerdownhere.net, wherever you are listening live, you can ask questions live. If you're not listening live and you're listening later and it's not 9:05 in the morning, then you can ask a question and we will talk about it tomorrow, because that's what we do around here. That's what SDH is. So we got lots of things to talk about. MLS is back. We don't have the plan for Orlando just yet, but we know a little bit more than we did when we wrapped up yesterday. We'll talk about all of that. We'll talk about other things around the world. Tottenham has had to take out a large loan. We'll get into that side of things. EFL, League One, people are getting angry. People are getting frustrated. We'll talk about that. Jessica Charman will be joining us at 10 o'clock for the second hour of the show. So we'll talk a lot of England and stuff with her. But let's start with MLS, John, and let's kind of recap where we are with Major League Soccer. CBA is done. It's done through the 2025 season. It actually runs through January 31st, 2026. It's an extra year than what had been agreed upon before the season started. You had some concessions both ways. One thing on the salary cut, and this is a little bit down to the way it's been reported, and it was the same around the world, so it's no different here. It's a 7.5% pay cut the rest of the way, and that will work out to a 5% pay cut for the whole year. Just like in Spain with Barcelona, for example, they took a 70% pay cut for a short period of time. It's going to work out to a 17% pay cut for the whole season. So keep that in mind when we start talking percentages, but let's compare the two. If MLS is their players who are not making as much generally, although that's not the case across the board, generally they're not making as much as Barcelona players, they're taking a far less pay cut because the league has worked through these issues. That's a credit to MLS, because MLS and Barcelona are both going to lose a lot of money right now. Other clubs who have had players take pay cuts, MLS is going to be one of the smaller ones, but they're going to take the biggest percentage hit in their revenue. It's just a fact. So it's a credit on both sides in how they've worked through this, because the owners have committed to a collective bargaining agreement coming out of a global pandemic that we've never seen before, and we don't know what the long-term effects are going to be. But they've committed to the spending in the CBA through the 25 season. That's to be applauded. The players stood up and made sure that certain things would not go into the CBA that could disadvantage them. They fought for their members. They made sure that there wasn't a lockout that was going to affect the health care of players, and we did find out that's exactly what the conversation was. We'll get to that in a minute. The players did a great job in staying united in making sure that everybody was taken care of, while also recognizing that this is the reality. The league's going to lose a lot of money right now, but the league is committing to an investment, essentially, in doing a season and going forward with the agreements that they had on paper. So outside of the pay cut, the other two major additions that we know of in the CBA at this point are major alterations. The first year of revenue sharing on a new media rights deal that we don't know what it's going to be, if it is over $100 million, the first year of it is not going to be shared at 25% with the players and go back into salaries and salary caps, etc. First year is going to be 12.5%. Second year and beyond is going to be 25%, as was previously agreed to. They were 10% was what the league wanted to give. 17% was what the players initially wanted. They settled on 12.5, reasonable. The players got their pay cut demand. The 7.5% is what the players were asking for from the beginning. The league agreed to it. The force majeure clause is in, but it is mostly, from what we've heard, based on what the players wanted, which is mostly based off the NBA CBA, which just roughly gives you the ability to renegotiate in light of anything outside of the owner's control that means they can't fulfill the terms of the CBA. You have to notify, you have to agree to discuss if it is exactly following the CBA one, and renegotiate a new situation. Don't know if the clause that's in the NBA one about games that are canceled due to a force majeure event, players' pay is docked by a certain percentage, whatever the percentage of a game check would be, essentially. We don't know if that's in there or not. That's, again, a fairly reasonable standard situation. That's where we're at. Other things the players fought for and got, the Orlando event is not going to be 8 to 10 weeks. It's going to be 35 days max. We don't know the exact terms yet of it. They do have to go to Orlando. They are not able to opt out for no reason like the NWSL players are. There has to be a valid reason. I think basically you have to ask for approval to opt out, and we'll see what that looks like. Chicharito, for example, was one player we thought might try to opt out. He is not going to opt out, even with his wife expecting. He is going to participate. So we don't know about Carlos Vela yet. He's another one that we're waiting to see. Christian Ramirez in Houston would be another one we're waiting to see who are in a similar situation. So I think the other big thing that came out of this yesterday is Don Garber said that it was, it was the commissioner who made the decision to threaten a lockout. And look, the commissioner works for the owners. We know how this works in a league with this. We've seen it in this country for a long time with league commissioners. They work at the owner's request. The owners can hire and fire commissioners. So was Don Garber working completely on his own here? Probably not. But he made the decision, and he said it yesterday, that he didn't think they would get to where they are yesterday with the announcement without pushing the way he did. Now, that's going to leave a pretty big bruise on the relationship with the players. And that's something that we haven't really had in this league ever. You've never had a lockout threatened, Garber said. That had never happened before. There were players who said, look, this is going to leave a mark. This is going to be something that we're going to remember. And you have to, because the thing that bothered a lot of players about it, that they have referenced and was referenced before, but we didn't know the exact context, now we do. The lockout would have threatened a stoppage of pay and a stoppage of benefits. And that was where players got immediately upset. 100% understandable. The league has to try to make this up to rebuild this relationship, rebuild the trust. That is where you're at. What we've seen other leagues fail to do in the past is when these situations happen that are difficult and a commissioner has to do what commissioners do, they don't recognize the damage that it does, and they don't recognize that you have to do things down the road to rebuild that relationship so you don't turn into Major League Baseball. That's what the league has to do now. So that's where you're at. You got it done. Both sides got a lot of wins out of it. Both sides are going to be able to move forward for the benefit of the league, for everybody involved in the league. But there are some things that could linger coming out of it, and the league has to be very intentional in correcting that perception and correcting that feeling and doing everything possible to rebuild that relationship to get it back to where it was, which was as strong as any sports relationship between a players' union, a players' association, and a league that we see. The Major League Soccer has to get back to that. So they've got some work to do. First, they've got some work to do in sorting out the particulars on what Orlando looks like.
Yeah, and basically my soundbite in this, I agree with everything that you've laid out so far. You've got to sit there and you remember this negotiation, and that was the point that you just made. Going forward, when it comes to other conversations that you're going to be having when it's players versus organization, you remember this for later, but you've got to be proactive in these discussions when you're trying to rebuild going forward. And I think that MLS understands that, knowing their place currently in the landscape. And I want to get into the Caitlin Murray article from Yahoo Sports in just a little bit, her op-ed about everything once it was settled. So really, right now, you've got a template. You have what you're doing. You've got it all laid out. Both sides need to be commended for stepping back from the edge, getting things squared away, making sure that you have something for the growth of the game long term. Yes, there's going to be some rebuilding of relationships after all of this, but at the bottom line, end of the day, you have to commend both sides for getting to the table, understanding the importance of what you were set to do, and laying it all out there so you can get back out there to play.
What did Caitlin Murray have to say in her op-ed?
At Yahoo Sports, after her initial intro, she says, the format of Orlando raises questions about logistics and safety that the league is apparently addressing, but there's another question to ask. Is it worth it for MLS to host this tournament at all?
Yes. It's 100% worth it to host this tournament at all. I think Don Garber specifically talked about those reasons. MLS is not in a position where they can afford not to have a season. We've talked about this since March. The NFL is going to have a season. The NBA today is likely to announce their return to finish the current season. The NHL has already announced that. Major League Baseball, if they don't, they're going to take the same hit that MLS would have if they didn't play. Perception. You want to be a major league in this country? If others are going to do this, you've got to find a way to do it. So do they need to do it? Yeah, they do. The potential that they can gain from being active right now is going to help them. The safety issues are there, but this is, again, where I go back to look at what Germany is doing. Look at what Spain is doing. Look at what England is doing. I know I've seen a lot of pushback that the U.S. right now, in terms of coronavirus, is not Germany. No, it's not. Is it comparable to England? Is it comparable to Spain? Is it comparable to Italy? Maybe a little bit closer there. And what you're finding is if you do these things correctly, if you have the proper protocols, it's not a comparison between the general public and MLS players. It's not. They're going to be tested at a level, they're going to be mandated to be tested at a level that no other person in the United States is doing on their own. Are there some jobs that are mandating that level of testing? I would hope so. I would assume so. I don't know what the testing protocols are in a factory, for example. I don't know what the testing protocols are mandated in tight office spaces, things like that. But you're going to be in tight space. You got to be tested. You got to be able to isolate. You got to be able to contact trace. You got to be able to do those things. I don't understand if you're paying attention to what's working in other leagues and other parts of the world. It's not about comparing the U.S. general population to the German general population, because MLS players will not be treated like the general population. I don't think, and I don't know every state's situation. I know in Georgia, for example, you can get a test if you want a test. Atlanta United doing testing, and what we're talking about, and this needs to be understood here, what we're talking about for MLS is probably in the ballpark of what Premier League is. 120 tests per week. That's the level you're talking about. Are there states that cannot have people do 120 tests a week without taking away from the general population? I don't think so. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. If there are, then these teams who are doing that, who are going to need that, are going to have to find a way to do it. Or you can't participate, and the league will find a way to do that. The league is paying for the testing in Orlando. Teams will do it in their markets. I think there's a lot of reasons why MLS needs to do this. And that's I don't understand why the argument is so strong here in the soccer media that they shouldn't come back. It hasn't been the case in other countries, and I don't know why MLS is being treated differently. If anything, I think Don Garber's comments yesterday about MLS in some ways being desperate and needing to come back, because he worries that if they don't play a season, the fan base will leave them, because you're talking about a league with 25 years. You're talking about some teams with 3-4 years. You don't play, are people going to forget about you a little bit? Is it going to look the same right now? No, it's not. It's not. But I do not understand why it's not across the board, but I don't understand why there are a lot of people in the soccer community who are very strong in saying they don't think MLS should come back. They don't think soccer should come back. And it's not, you can't talk about other sports because they're going to come back. That ship sailed. So it's not like MLS is the only one coming back. The NWSL is coming back for a short tournament, but they're coming back to do something, and they've created a protocol that their players have bought into. If you've paid attention to what's happened in Germany, in England, with testing results, Spain as well, there's not a spread going on in these leagues. There's not. So if you are doing the proper level of testing, if you are fulfilling the protocols that you are being asked to do, and if players and staff are taking on the responsibility of doing what we all should be doing and limiting risk and avoiding situations that put us at risk of contracting the coronavirus and of spreading it, I don't know where the argument is. And I don't get why it's such a... I don't know, maybe I'm just sensitive to it because, what's my job? What's my industry? What's any other industry I've worked in my adult life? My teenage life. Everything I've worked in has been something that's been affected by this. Everything I have ever worked in, whether it was retail, whether it has been drive and lift, whether it has been delivery of things. I delivered newspapers for a long time. I kept score and did PA for youth baseball leagues when I was in high school. Everything I have done to work has been affected by this. Am I just supposed to shut down and not do anything? I mean, I don't understand. We have to do the things that make it safe. That's where the argument is, people. It's not about, you can't come back. Well, what can we do to make it safe to come back? No, you can't come back. Well, what if we do these things to make it safe to come back? You shouldn't come back. So nothing should come back. Like, that's what I'm saying. I don't get it. And don't give me this thing that sports aren't important. Do not give me this thing that sports aren't important. It's insulting. It's insulting to people who take it seriously. It's insulting to people who work in it. And it's also insulting to the power of sports. If you don't think sports are important, you're missing the whole point. Sports bring people together. Sports provide a platform to bring about good things in communities. Look at all the things that MLS teams have done, that NBA teams have done, that NFL teams have done in their communities. Look at all the positive voices we get from athletes right now today. With everything going on in the world today, we are getting very important statements from athletes. Why are people listening? Because they are athletes and they are professional athletes and they are known. They have a voice, and it's a voice we need to hear. Sports are important, and you have to do it safely, 100%. That's where the questions should be. That's where the questions should be. But I don't know why the conversation is so simple. Basic. This isn't a simple, basic issue. It's not. We know that. You have to do things to limit the spread of a virus that is highly contagious. It is. There's no denying it. So it's like on one side we've got the it's nothing, don't worry about it. And on the other side it's like we can't play sports. There is middle ground, people. The Bundesliga is showing you that, whether you like it or not, and I guess some people don't. The Premier League is showing you that. One positive test yesterday, and the next round of tests, you've had like 13 positive tests, if I'm not mistaken, over 5,000 plus. You've had weeks of activity now, and you haven't seen an uptick in cases. You've had weeks of activity in Germany. You have not seen an uptick in cases. You can do this. You have to take those things very seriously. But, yeah, MLS should come back. MLS will benefit from coming back. Obviously, MLS is also going to lose a lot of money in coming back, but they are outweighing the things that they can do for their league, for their business, for their brand. And yeah, I do think the league wants to come back to get back to doing the things that it does well. Bringing people together, even if they can't truly be together in a venue right now. Doing the things in the community that their teams do. Those things are very important, and coming back will allow teams to do that. So I completely and utterly disagree with this idea that you can't do it and you shouldn't do it, more importantly.
She continues off of the quote that you referenced specifically from Don Garber. Mm-hmm. Absence from the sports scene made it really crucial for us to get back. Mm-hmm. Murray's copy. His implication was that no one will forget those other leagues exist, but MLS risks losing relevance as long as it doesn't play games. If MLS can hog the spotlight for itself, no matter how briefly, it would be a much bigger boost to the relatively young soccer league than its well-established competitors. Perhaps Garber's right, but there's a flip side here. MLS's most compelling aspects won't be on display, not at what Alejandro Bedoya calls a luxurious prison, and newcomers will be sampling a degraded product. Unlike NFL, NBA, and MLB, MLS can't claim it's the best league in the world at its given sport. If someone wants to watch the best soccer, they'll tune into the Premier League or a handful of other leagues around Europe. What MLS has going for it is a robust supporters culture unlike anything in that traditional American sports offer. The fans, perhaps more than the players, are MLS's unique selling proposition. Timbers Army may deride the league for using footage of their stunningly elaborate TIFO displays and smoke-filled chants, but it's easy to see why these images are favored. They're captivating and create an intoxicating, electrifying atmosphere in which it's easy to be swept up. Mercedes-Benz Stadium never looks like a more fun place than when Atlanta United and its supporters are in the house. Sorry, Falcons. But those fans aren't going to be in Orlando. Whether the venues are quiet enough to hear a pin drop or the home, in quotation marks, teams get to pick their own playlist to serve as the soundtrack, any American who thought soccer lacked excitement is not going to be swayed by an awkward makeshift quarantine tournament.
Okay. There are multiple things going on here. I do not think MLS is rushing back to grab the spotlight for a month before the NBA comes back. I don't know when the NHL is going to come back. I don't know when Major League Baseball is going to come back. Sounds like the NBA will be back July 31st to start their somewhat regular season, somewhat play-in tournament, whatever you want to call it. I don't think MLS is rushing back. I think MLS is going to be in a position to come back. They're on the same kind of timeline that every other soccer league in the world has operated under. So they're not doing it too fast. The argument that you shouldn't come back without fans in the stands has come up worldwide. And yeah, it does detract from the product. What has been the reaction in Germany, though?
Higher ratings across the board.
Mm-hmm. What have we talked about more in this country, probably than we ever have? The Bundesliga. Mm-hmm. Is it different? Yeah, it is. And that'll get talked about too. Absolutely. But the other side of all of this is what Don Garber said and what we've been talking about from day one. There is a business to this. You like it or not. I think in this utopia that sometimes we all want to live in when it comes to sports, we think that money doesn't drive decision-making. We know better. It does. It has to, because you can't have the players on the field that get the response from the Timbers Army, from the 17s here, from any other supporters group. You can't have them here and pay them well enough to keep them here or pay them enough to bring them here without money, period. MLS would lose more money in the long run, in my opinion, and I think it's somewhat obvious, but maybe I'm just completely wrong. I think they would lose more money in the short term because of the TV deals, because of sponsorship deals that they are going to be able to at least fulfill to some degree this season. They would lose every bit of revenue this season if you don't play. Outside of what you made for your first two games. And by coming back, I think you will be better positioned when you have fans in the stands to bounce back quicker. And I do think you'll be able to make more money this year than you would have if you don't play. So, yeah, there are absolutely financial reasons for doing it. And in the long run, you have to have those things to have the product that is better with fans. I don't think there's any arguing that. It will be on the league. It will be on their broadcast partners, and it sounds like ESPN is going to take the lead in this, although there will be games on the Fox family of networks and on the Univision family of networks. The production will be handled by ESPN on site. They're going to have to work really hard to make this as compelling of a TV product as possible. We've seen NASCAR do some different things and get better ratings. We saw some very different things in golf with a couple of different charity events and get strong ratings. You can't not do something as a double negative, but I think you follow me. You can't be inactive because you're afraid of not putting out a good enough product. You don't move forward that way. You don't grow that way. You don't do anything that way. You grow and you move forward and you progress if you say, this is a risk. We're going to have to do some things differently, but we've got to go for it now because of all the other compelling reasons. I don't think you can sit it out because you're afraid it's not going to look good enough. You have to make it look good enough and go forward. Those are two different attitudes. I think MLS has to stop being scared. And American soccer has an inferiority complex. This is part of it. American soccer has to stop being scared. Go for it. Stop this nonsense of we're not good enough, we're never going to do this, we can't win a World Cup, we can't do this, we can't have a professional women's league. Well, we have. Well, we can't have a Division I league that people care about. Well, we do. Well, we can't have a Division II league that matters. Well, we do. Well, you can't have a Division III league. There's no demand for it. Well, you do. Stop. Actually believe in American soccer. Please?
She continues.
I like Caitlin Murray's work a lot, but I disagree with her opinion here. I want to make that clear.
Yeah. The bigger worry for MLS may not be traditional American sports fans. The biggest risk may be with soccer fans, the ones who wake up early on weekends to watch the Premier League in droves but don't attend MLS games in their own backyard. These are the fans, often derided as, quote, Euro snobs, end quote, who love soccer but day because they deem it a far inferior product. They aren't entirely wrong. MLS isn't close to the EPL, but those fans aren't exactly right either.
Stop doing this, American soccer. God, this just makes me so angry. Stop. We suck. Just forget it. Why do we care? We suck. I don't know why I even matter. This is so stupid. God, this happens every single time. Okay, tell us why we suck, please.
The quote-end-quote retirement league jokes no longer apply as MLS's stars get younger and more exciting, and MLS's quality has grown massively in the past 5 years. MLS, under normal circumstances, can feature some worthwhile soccer in front of packed crowds. Yet the Orlando...
It's good as worthwhile. That's great. I'm glad it's worthwhile. Man, when people care about something and it's worthwhile, come on.
Paragraph. Yet the Orlando tournament figures to be MLS's worst version of itself. The players will be coming off a much longer and more stagnant layoff than usual, and their preseason will be shorter too. Getting players game fit will be a challenge, and the threat of injuries is always present. Put it blunt.
Hold up.
Sure.
Hold up.
Yep.
Atlanta United started training, this year? Second week of January?
Mm-hmm.
When was their first competitive game?
A couple of weeks after that, wasn't it?
No, competitive game, not friendly.
Oh, I was thinking CONCACAF.
It was a
month.
At least 5 weeks. 4 to 5 weeks. What are we looking at right now? We're going to start playing in early July.
Yeah.
What are we looking at? Don't. If you're going to come with facts, all right? Come on. You're going to have about the same amount of time, and you're not starting from scratch. You're not starting from a true off season. Stop.
She
Please.
continues.
I know, and she is a great soccer writer. I so vehemently disagree with her opinions here because Fitness, as Jared Sifford, who's listening on speaker, says, why would fitness be a problem? I don't know. Because players have been doing individual workouts. They're going to have a month. That's what they typically have. That's what Atlanta United had this season. And the Euro snob argument, they're not watching anyway. You don't do your business plan on the people who talk trash about your business. You do your business plan to grow your business. Do you want to attract some of them? Yeah, you do. And you'd like to. But you're not crafting a league to impress somebody who's calling it a retirement league in 2020 because they haven't looked at the league in 10 years. You're not creating a strategy based off of them. They don't care. And they're wrong. You know who does care? Their kids. Their kids. Because their kids are growing up in an MLS market with a team in their backyard. And maybe their dad or their mom is sitting there saying, well, I don't care about this because Manchester United or Liverpool or Chelsea or Bayern Munich or whoever is my team. I don't care. The kids do. And how do you continue to grow something? You get younger, and you appeal to the younger base. And that's what MLS has done a very good job with. And, yeah, by the way, the Euro snob thing, while we're at it, while we're just throwing fireworks all over the place this morning, why is it that fans of the European game are more snobby about MLS and American soccer than fans of the Latin American game? Because while Liga MX and Mexican fans in the United States hold true to the clubs that they've supported for their whole lives, and their kids do too, you've seen games in Atlanta, right? You saw the Atlanta Club America Campeones Cup match, right? You saw a lot of people who are fans of both teams and are passionate about both teams. Why can't hardcore fans of European teams be that way? It doesn't make any sense to me. Don't give me the snobby thing about Mexican soccer or South American soccer while we're at it. If you don't like MLS, that's fine. I don't really care anymore if you don't like MLS. Doesn't matter to me. I'm not talking to you. You've already made your decision. I'm talking to people who are open to it. I'm talking to people who are soccer fans, who are looking for live soccer. That's what we're doing right now. That's how you grow the league. You don't spend your time crafting a message and crafting a strategy towards people who aren't interested and are vocally opposed to you. You're trying to get the people who are more on the fence, who are not vocally opposed, and you're trying to bring them over to your side. So, worrying about appealing to the Euro snobs? Really? Come on.
She continues.
I know.
No one is going to watch subpar EPL games and decide that EPL isn't good. No one will watch the NBA without fans and decide it's boring. In Garber's own words, fans are, quote, deeply mature, end quote, in their view of those leagues. If a fan tunes into MLS for the first time, what are they going to get? And if it's not good enough, what's the likelihood that was MLS's only shot and that fan will never give it another try? It's a risk.
Give people more credit, please, first off. I've watched... So, okay. Then let's follow this argument.
Sure.
NBC should never, ever, ever show me a Bournemouth-Norwich game, ever. It shouldn't be televised. Burn the tape. Sorry, yeah. Norwich fans. I apologize.
Yeah, Michelle not allowed, yes.
Yeah, sorry. But don't give me that nonsense. Don't give me that. Every league has crap. Every league in the world has garbage. Garbage games. Games that should have been good, that are garbage. Games that you didn't expect to be good, that are awesome. Every league has that. Soccer is soccer. If you are judging it like you are on a reality show talent competition, I don't really care what you think. if you are judging it for the emotion in the game, for the tactics, for the compelling nature of that matchup, cool, I want to talk to you. But if you're going to sit here and say, well, it's the same you get in every sport. It's like, well, this isn't as good as it was in the last decade, or this isn't as good as this over here, or this isn't as good. Well, go be miserable on your own. I don't really care. If you don't like it, don't watch. Are you really going to, again, not do something that has long-term benefit, that has short-term benefit, and will position your league to bounce back far quicker than if you don't play? Are you going to say, no, we're not going to do that because we're worried that some guy who's a hardcore Sunderland fan is not going to like it because it's not going to have fans and it's not going to have this or that? Come on. Did you ever think that maybe MLS is deciding to come back in the way that they are because they want to give something back to the people who matter, the people who are fans of the league? And there's a lot of them. Did you ever think that? Can we stop this nonsense that American soccer sucks and needs to go find millions and millions of new fans? How many people are going to MLS games every year? Millions.
Mm-hmm.
What's the attendance? Really good. One of the best in the world. Top 10. I think it is top 10. If not, it's top 12. In the world, by the way. World. Did you ever think that MLS is trying to come back for them? That's what matters. Somebody who already created a Twitter profile or a Reddit profile to trash the league, and that's all they do is post how much they hate MLS. Do you think they're going to get turned around by anything?
Nope.
So then we should just shut the league down because those people are never going to be happy. So forget it. Let's just cancel it all because, I'm trying to think of generic team till I die to post a screed on Reddit about how MLS is not as good as my English League One team. Stop. Do it for the people who matter, the people who are actually emotionally invested in it.
She continues.
I know.
Reports indicate some star players can opt out of MLS's tournament if they have legitimate concerns around COVID-19, such as a significant other who is pregnant. She mentions Vela and Chicharito, and we already talked about Chicharito.
Chicharito ain't opting out. We'll see about the
Nope.
rest. You want to talk about people opting out? The NWSL, Megan Rapinoe is opting out, according to her coach, and there's not really a reason there, and that sucks. And I think MLS has created an opt-out procedure that is a little more robust. There's got to be valid reasoning there to do it. But you can't have it both ways. You can't say that you're worried about safety and you're worried about protocols and all this, and this is a valid concern, and this should be something the league's taken seriously, and then say that they can't opt out. Like she can't argue it both ways. If it's different, which it is, than the regular season, this is not what the contract was set up for this season. Nobody planned on this. And there are valid reasons for opting out, then you opt out. Players miss games for reasons that are outside of an injury. Players miss games because their wife is going to give birth. Players miss games because of an illness or a death in the family. Like, these things happen. And this is different because this is not as simple as just missing a game, because you are dealing with a contagious virus. So there's a different situation, a different protocol. That's life. That's where we're at. And we'll see what happens.
MLS players are required to play in the tournament in Orlando, Garber said, but he added there will be exceptions for special circumstances without outlining them. Depending on what those exceptions are, other star players may also not be in Orlando. MLS can't make a compelling case when its best players aren't there.
That's fear-mongering. That's really unfortunate that that's going to be in here, because there have been there's been two players who have talked about potentially opting out or not participating. One of them has said that they are participating. So you're leaving it with Carlos Vela. I will put Christian Ramirez potentially in that conversation because his wife is expecting. He talked about that with the insurance concerns, not with opting out. That's it. That's it. That's all. So where is this coming from? This is just creating fear out of nowhere. And we've got to be better, y'all. If we're going to cover the sport and try to, part of trying to cover the sport is getting people interested. Why are we telling people not to be interested? Why are we trashing the product that we're covering? I don't get it.
She continues.
I know.
This also brings up another group of soccer fans MLS should strive to court during its quarantine competition, but may not be equipped to: Spanish speakers. Liga MX games. Liga MX games, not to mention El Clásicos between Barcelona and Real Madrid. Barcelona and Real Madrid. Get my upper plate to work this morning. Routinely dominate soccer TV ratings in the United States, while the top-rated MLS games get fractions of the audience. The country's most sizable soccer audience speaks Spanish and cares more about teams in Mexico and Spain. MLS has historically struggled to reach these fans, which is why the league continuously looks for ways to partner with Liga MX. Players like Vela and Chicharito are important for that outreach, but those players may not be in Orlando and others might not be either. Regardless, it appears MLS isn't letting what it lacks hold this plan back. Conclusion.
So hold on. So
sure.
you're taking a rumor that has already been partially debunked, and you're stretching it to now, not even just saying that, well, people have talked about potentially not playing and they might not play. And yeah, this guy said that before, but now he's going to play, but we're going to leave that out of the whole conversation. Maybe she wrote this before that came out. I don't know.
I think so.
That's fine. But now you're going to take that to the point that you're going to be talking about one of the biggest games in the world that dwarfs the TV audiences for a lot of different countries, dwarfing the audience here. Yes, that happens. You're going to talk about Liga MX dwarfing MLS TV ratings. Compare the ratings. They're better, but dwarfing is, and comparing it to El Clasico, come on, we're not in the same planet. But then using that to say you shouldn't go forward with this, that doesn't make sense as an argument. It makes zero sense. So I don't know. I mean, when I hear this, when I'm reading this, I'm questioning why I actually care about American soccer, because it's worthless, it sounds like.
Conclusion. Regardless, it appears MLS isn't letting what it lacks hold this plan back. There may be no fans, missing stars, and so-so soccer, but MLS does have a live sports product it can put on TV in the age of COVID-19 that may be all MLS needs. Whether it's the right decision for the long term or tarnishes an MLS brand that is still struggling to solidify its identity, time will tell.
Tarnishes the brand that is trying to establish an identity. We're in a different world, y'all, and that needs to be understood. Right now, I think people understand that this is not typical. When you're watching, as you've watched whatever on ESPN, if you've watched local news when they weren't in the building, if you've watched anything where people are not working in their normal studio, was it the argument that you just shouldn't have it? You just don't put on the local news because the people can't be in the studio and do it like they always do. It can't be at the same level. So don't do it. No, nobody said that. You have to find a way forward right now, and you are going to benefit from what's going on. You are going to benefit from participating right now, and it is a necessary step. Is it ideal? No, it's not. Not at all. It's not ideal at all. You want fans in the stands. You want 50,000 people at games here. You want all those things because you want them because it makes the product better. They bring you more money. You want them. But your argument can't be don't do anything if it's not perfect. That's not real life either. And it's a frustrating argument, and I do not like that American soccer continues to have a bad impression of itself. doesn't mean you have to lie to pump it up. But it also doesn't mean you have to find ways to trash it and stretch the reality or just ignore things to trash it either. Covering something is not constantly trashing it. It's not. And I don't understand why that feels like it's a big part of the American soccer voice. American soccer is not perfect. It never has been. It probably never will be, because no country's soccer is perfect. We're on the field, off the field, any of it. That's why one country doesn't win the World Cup every single time. That's why one country's best teams don't win the Champions League every single time. Nobody's perfect with this. American soccer still has a lot of room to grow. I think we talk about this on a daily basis. But that doesn't mean it's garbage. We've got to stop treating it as garbage. I think what MLS is doing here, because what's the other argument? I mean, if you don't play, do you pay the players full salary all year long if you are not going to do anything this year? How do you justify that when you're going to lose $1 billion?
Yeah.
So do we want the players to not get paid? Because you can't have it both ways. You can't argue, well, don't do anything that might help with the bottom line. Don't do anything because we can't upset the Euro snobs. We don't do anything. But pay everybody 100%. Oh, you're going to lose $1 billion? Well, that doesn't matter. It does matter. That's part of the equation. You can't talk about the effects of COVID-19 on sports if you don't talk about the financial effects. You cannot do it. That doesn't justify coming back recklessly. That doesn't justify not following safety protocols. That doesn't justify being stupid about your activities. What it justifies is finding the safest way to come back and participate at the highest level that you are able to do, so you keep the business living and breathing. That's life right now, y'all. That's what professional soccer, professional baseball, professional football, professional basketball, professional hockey, college football, because it's essentially professional. College basketball we can put there too. Professional lacrosse, professional rugby, golf, tennis, all of it. NASCAR, IndyCar, UFC, all of it.
AEW.
All of it. Well, we're talking sports, John. No offense. No offense. Sports entertainment and sports are two different things. Talking professional sports, and money's part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to recognize that. And like I said, and I want to make this 100% abundantly clear, I don't want this twisted out of shape here. Just because money's part of it doesn't mean you come back and you don't do the proper testing and you don't do the proper protocols and you don't care about a viral spread. No. You have to do that. But you do that so you can come back, so you can deal with the economic reality of where we're at. And that's a big part of MLS's decision. Even though MLS, percentage-wise, is going to lose more in revenue than any other league in the world that is coming back. That's a fact. The Scottish Premiership is not coming back because of the financial reality. They're not the Netherlands. They're not France, where the government said you can't come back. They're not coming back because of the financial reality. The Belgian league is not coming back because of the financial reality. That's where we're at. So you're finding a way to do it because you think the long-term benefit is going to be worth it. I disagree with so much of what was said in that article because it felt like a regurgitated argument about why we shouldn't care about Major League Soccer. And it's very upsetting to hear that from somebody who knows the game really, really well and has watched it grow in Portland up close and personal. And gets it. I don't know why we're falling back on those same old tired things about worrying about Euro snobs. We can't appeal to this. We can't do that. It can't be this. Right now, it's not going to be perfect, but it's better than nothing. Because if you don't come back, all the gains you've made, I could tell you directly from 92.9 The Game, which is the terrestrial radio station that covers soccer more than any other in this country. Not talking about Sirius XM with a dedicated channel to soccer. I'm talking about terrestrial, over-the-air station in this country. 92.9 The Game covers it more than anybody. If you don't have it come back when others do, that changes the perception. Because then the question is, well, why aren't they? Well, it's going to cost them a lot of money too. Well, it's going to cost the NFL. It's going to cost Major League Baseball. It's going to cost the NBA. Well, it's going to cost them too much money too. Well, then it's not a big deal, is it? Because that's part of the conversation. There's a lot of reasons for coming back. So I think this is a silly argument completely. And we will see how things get handled going forward. I also saw the reaction to the FC Dallas player testing positive yesterday. It's like, oh no, this is the last thing anybody needs. Players tested positive in the first round of testing in every league that has come back. I would assume that people in any first round of testing in any industry have tested positive in that first round when they're coming back. Because there are a lot of people who have had COVID-19 and have not had any understanding that they've had it because they haven't had any symptoms. So you're going to have some positive tests. This is the whole reason why you test. You test so that person who is asymptomatic, who has not felt bad, is not going to go into training and potentially spread it. You test, you isolate them, you test everybody else, you move forward as you are able to. You nip it in the bud now. This is the whole point. It's not oh no, this is where we're all screwed now. No, this is why you're doing testing. This is so you can come back and play. You have to pay attention to what other countries are doing with this because they are ahead of it in terms of coming back to live sports. And I don't think that they are all dumb for doing so, whether it's because the product is a little bit different or they are ignoring safety protocols. I don't think that's the case for either. I think they're understanding the benefits of doing it, and they're doing it in a responsible way.
For me, and I will admit that my response is probably, go for it. Watermelon?
Yes.
Okay.
I need it after that.
I will admit probably that my responses are a little more reactionary and base in their arguments. To me, in going through this article, it seemed almost a passive-aggressive way of saying without fans, it's not worth it, so why should we? And it's disappointing when you see stuff like this come out in print because when you have MLS come out here and knowing the risks, both in the stands and financial, that they are going to be the second league to come online and put a product out there. I think that what this does, much like my point of view with the NWSL, is it gives the opportunity for that casual fan to see what those who enjoy MLS already are getting to see. Yes, it is different, and I think that a lot of folks aren't giving fans the benefit of the doubt when it comes to what they're wanting to see and what they're watching these days. It's like, yes, you have live sports out there. Great, I'm going to go watch. I think that folks are sitting there and saying a lot of times, more often than not, well, there's no one in the stands and they're just getting back out there, so it's not worth it. It's not for you to tell me what's worth my viewing habit. If I'm going to sit there and see, I will readily admit that I'm the guy who watched iRacing when NASCAR tried that before their season came back. Why? Because it was different, because it was interesting, and because of how it was presented by Fox. Fox took it seriously and presented it as such. They made it entertaining. So I was drawn into that. I watched the Bundesliga because A, it was a live event. B, I wanted to see how it was going to be presented on television. And C, it was something different for me. I am not the guy that has readily gone to the Bundesliga when Bundesliga matches have been on TV. But because it's there, I opened up, my directory and sat there, and I've been watching more Bundesliga than I have in the past. I'm watching the Costa Rican League more. I watched the Costa Rican game last night between Saprissa and Jicaral because it was there, because it was a live event, because it was something that increases my viewing habits. So for someone to tell me what I shouldn't do, tell me why I should do something instead of sitting there and saying, nah, it's not worth your time. Wait for the environments to happen. Let me be the person to decide that. And for MLS, you mentioned the whole Eurosnob argument. For me, I've always thought, regardless of whatever the business is, you could be the best damn widget manufacturer on the planet. You're looking to sell to the folks who buy your widgets and want to use your widgets. You're going to cater to 100% of your widget audience, and if you get some folks who've never done widgets before and haven't figured out, I still don't know what a widget is, but just that seems to be the economic example that folks use.
Okay.
If you sit there and it's like, I've never used a widget before. I've never used a hammer. I've never used a circular saw. And I see what somebody is doing with a circular saw. Maybe I should get that because that might help me too. Get 100% of your audience, get 100% of your core, build your core from what you already have. And if you attract the casual fan with your presentation, that's a gain. That is a net gain for your property. You've got somebody else who wants to use a circular saw who never thought to use a circular saw before. Because you put it out there that a circular saw could help. It's like, damn, people. You mention it, and when you get fired up about it, and the element where you're sitting there and you're saying that American soccer needs to stop being afraid, I feel like that should be a treatise, and it should be something. This is an opportunity. Bottom line, this is an opportunity for Major League Soccer to get out there, to get back to, once again, reinforce what it means to the communities, what it means to each of its member teams, what it means to each of its fan groups and things. You're out there before everybody else. You're showing that you and your fans, and you're giving your fans something to watch, that players and labor can work together to get back out there. We're not seeing that in some other sports, who are risking screwing the pooch, not for the first time, but for the second time in their history. MLS is showing that they're getting out there first. They're showing initiative. They're showing that they care. I mean, and when you have folks who are in other leagues, you mentioned the USL Championship and League One and what they mean to each of their markets. You still see teams who are out there in their markets. You see them out there and they're doing things for the good of their community because that's who they are. They're a part of the fabric of this whole thing. Mm-hmm. And when you have an article like this that says, you're denying what the sport means to not just the larger markets, but what it means all the way down to the grassroots level. And that
I'm going to say one more thing about this before we get Jessica Charman on the line.
Sure.
The idea that you don't come back and it's not a big deal, that people will wait for you. I mean, it was almost like she said that you're trying to appeal to other fans, so you can't do things that don't look 100% perfect, but your hardcore fans will just wait for you and be completely fine. I grew up as a hardcore of hardcore baseball fans. Mm-hmm. As a kid, I could tell you the starting lineup for every team in the National League down to their batting stance.
Yeah.
We would play wiffle ball in the backyard, and I would mimic the batting stance of every team as we would play through it.
Rod
Collected
Carew.
baseball cards, played Stratomatic baseball, all of it. 1994 ended me as a hardcore baseball fan. The 95 World Series, I don't have that strong of a feeling. I mean, I watched the final game. I remember it. I remember celebrating, and I was happier in 91 and 92 because it hadn't been tainted yet for me. And it never came back for me. Since that strike, I've probably watched 20 full baseball games since 1994.
Yeah, right there with you.
So that's a prime example of what it can do if you don't do it correctly. And they went on strike and everybody else played on and all that stuff happened. Yes, it did. This would be different, but you can't just expect people to wait for you forever. You need to come back. You need to play. You need to give people the people are being excited and asking about lineups this morning. That's why you come back. It's absolutely why you come back. So American soccer is going to be okay. And man, if I have to keep yelling about it, we're going to actually believe in it at some point and believe in the power of it. All right, while I am getting Jess up on the line, you are going to tell us about Steve Apolinski in Decatur, Georgia.
Sure thing. And I'm glad that Joe Johnstone has figured out how to put our Twitch feed on the big screen, as he's shown us this morning on his Twitter feed. Yeah, so it's right there, big TV monitor.
And now we've completely wrecked everything. So hang on with us for just a second. Keep grooving, since everything wants to fall apart all at once. I will blame John's connection and maybe Jessica's connection as well.
I'm on Wi-Fi.
Oh, you're with us. Okay, good. So now we lost John somehow in all this.
I guess I kicked John out, didn't I?
You
it
might
was all my
have.
fault.
John has a very important read to make, so he is going to join us here in just a second. We have to do that before we can move on, because that's how things work around here, Jess.
Okay, that's fine. I'll just hold with suspense.
It's good to talk to you, though. But John is back. Jessica kicked John off the call. John, you got to tell us about Steve Apolinski right now.
Apolinski and Associates, LLC. I don't know if there's any music behind me or not. aa-legal.com. So, you can do it a bunch of different ways. Steve Apolinski, Apolinski and Associates, proud supporters of soccer down here in the SDH network. Go to aa-legal.com, pop-up window, low right-hand corner, and you can get a free consultation by calling 404-377-9191 or shoot Steve an email at steve, S-T-E-V-E, at aa-legal.com. Over 30 years of experience, over $40 million in judgments, wrongful death, serious injury for his clients in Georgia and Alabama. Recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend Magazine as being one of the top 100 legal firms and lawyers here in the state of Georgia. 404-377-9191. Apolinski and Associates, aa-legal.com. Don't call the pop-up window and ask for an appraisal or a conversation on a live chat at 3 o'clock in the morning because Jason thinks that's creepy.
That's creepy.
aa-legal.com.
All right, now that everything's fallen apart. Hello, Jess. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. That was a beautiful read, John. Absolutely beautiful.
What we're here for.
All right, we got Premier League news to talk about, which is right on time. John, you want to bring that up with their announcements from their meeting this morning?
I'll bring it. Clubs agree to 5 substitutions and 9 players on bench. Premier League clubs will be allowed to make 5 subs for the rest of the season, have 9 players on the bench. It was agreed at the shareholders meeting on Thursday. The increase from 3 permitted changes to 5 from 7 subs to 9 was announced by the league in a short statement. Changes have been agreed because of the volume of games due to be played in quick succession after the break forced by the coronavirus pandemic. The Premier League due to restart on June 17 under a temporary law amendment approved by the International Football Association Board. Substitutions allowed in a maximum of 3 play-in slots at halftime and at half to avoid unnecessary stoppages. It is understood no decision was taken on a framework for how to decide the season if it cannot be completed.
Very interesting. All right. I think we fixed all this. Jess, what do you think about this? I'm not surprised because everybody else has gone forward with it. So I think the Premier League kind of had to. But how do you think this changes the strategy of a manager?
I think it's a difficult one. Obviously, like you say, other leagues have gone forward with the substitutions. We knew that the Premier League was going to learn the Liga has very similar leagues, so we expected it. However, you have to wonder how those teams or how those coaching staff of the teams that have a smaller budget feel about this. Because when you add those extra substitutions, when you add that squad depth, it does favor a team that has that bigger budget to spread around. You're going to have teams that put a player on the bench as the 8th and 9th sub that is worth the entire bench of other squads. So I think if you're one of those lesser budgeted teams and one of those teams that may be struggling, you're a little bit concerned about this. You might only have youth players to go ahead and throw in those positions, whereas other people will have quality on the bench. So I think that's a tough one. And some teams, I know before this decision was made, there were some concerns from those teams that felt that this would be a detriment to them.
Yeah, none of this is ideal as you're figuring out how to deal with the challenges that are going to be coming. And you're going to play a more tightly packed schedule. I think some of the concerns about the time leading into games is a little overblown. I think they have enough time. But
in college, we used to play. In college, you play Saturday, Monday, the entire season. Yeah. So it's doable. It's definitely doable. Do we have more injuries? Yes. In college, are there roll-on, roll-off subs? Yes. But if an 18-year-old person can do it, someone that's a pro soccer player can do it. And I agree. I think at times, don't get me wrong, the level they're playing is draining and exhausting on their bodies, but they're professional athletes. Let's be real here. So I think that it's overboard, like you.
Yeah, I think it's just a little too much. No surprises there. We've got some other things going on in England that I want to get to with you, Jess. So Andy Hunter at The Guardian spoke with Jurgen Klopp of Liverpool, and there were some things said. We've been kind of waiting to see with Klopp being so outspoken, kind of how he would handle some of the different challenges that are coming up, and you know, whether it's on the field or off. And he said a few different things. He said, it feels 100% like a secure environment, but we can never be sure there will be nil infections because we still have a normal life. The boys are massively disciplined. It has been nearly 11 weeks already, which for people in this age is a true challenge. It is for all of us a challenge, but for them especially. We go to petrol stations, we need fuel, we need food, stuff like this. We wear face masks, and I do not understand why everyone in England, especially in close areas, is not wearing a face mask and gloves. It helped in Germany a lot. I'm not an expert, but it helped there a lot. We told the boys wherever they went, I wanted them to wear face masks and gloves, so just from that point of view, we're all the biggest enemies sometimes, so we have to stay disciplined, and we will. I mean, it's a smart statement from Jurgen Klopp, and I think it's fair. You know, this isn't easy to tell players that, hey, things are a little bit different for you these days, and you have to do things differently, but I think he's set an expectation for his players to be smart in handling all of this.
So I lost you during that whole speech, so I didn't hear anything. So I'm going to hand it off to comment on what you just said, Jason.
Tell us about your thoughts on what Klopp had to say.
Well, I mean, it's great that you've set an expectation for your players, and that you're being that face of you know, that voice of reason and wisdom right now, because you need to be, not just for players, but you need to be for your fans as well. You know, yesterday we were talking about Jurgen Klopp and where has he been when it comes to making sure that fans aren't congregating. Begin starting society in general. I would have liked to have just heard it earlier, though.
Yeah, we will. Let's see how Liverpool handles it. There are some expectations that you'll have some issues more on the field with fans, et cetera, et cetera. Jess, I want you to hang tight real quick. I'm going to reconnect with you because I'm going to reconnect and re-add you back with me as we work through this. So, Jess, I'll get you right back. And okay, that's a little bit better. Something was wrong with Jess's connection, and it was affecting all of it. So let's try it the other way and bring this back. And if if it doesn't work this time, we'll reconnect in general another time with Jess.
Yeah, I've got a couple of things that I wanted to. There's one about with the and then our airborne DJ buddy Tom Russo had a question for the show that I wanted to introduce to the two of you today. So there are a couple things that I've got on the list. And I guess in addition to Jess's thoughts on Megan Rapinoe not being a part of the Utah Cup out of the NWSL. So there's some things to talk to Jess about.
Okay, we're going to try to do that now, although I think it's a little bit Jess?
I'm here. I can hear you guys pretty good right now.
Let's talk about that for you that I wanted to get to is Megan Rapinoe. On the NWSL side. It came out from the manager of OL Reign, Farid Ben Stidi, coming over from Lyon. He said this about the absence of Rapinoe from the Challenge Cup and the training camp they're doing right now. He said, "It's a shame. I understand her motivations, but I'm disappointed and frustrated that she isn't with us to play in the tournament. Megan is important to the group, and we could have done something important with the team if she joined the rest of the group. The team, as well as women's soccer, will miss her a lot." Pretty fair statement, but I haven't heard what those reasons are for her not participating yet.
Fair statement. It's
I think we might have lost you, Jess.
Yeah, I think she's drifting in and out this morning.
Yeah, okay. We will get Jess back on. Connections are not being kind to us this morning at all. Sorry, you guys, for listening and the technical difficulties. We'll reconnect with Jess at another time. We'll be back on Mondays on a normal time slot. Jess is going to be hanging out with us for a Monday evening show on the regular. So, have you seen anything else about Rapinoe's reasoning why? Because there hasn't been an official statement.
Nope, I have not. I just
quote,
just
French.
That, and so that's the only thing I've seen, and no details from this side of the Atlantic to Rapinoe's absence in training camp and the tournament, and it's just disappointing. I mean, that's the only word that I really can use that's attached to it when you have someone who is as tied, inextricably linked, really, to women's soccer, both in its history and currently, and she's not going to be a part of this moment that the NWSL has. It's like I said, disappointing is the only thing that really comes to mind across the board, that you're not having someone with this stature attached.
Yeah, it affects the product, and it hurts the league as a whole, and that's not good for the NWSL. Does it, to go to our earlier discussion in the first hour, does it mean that the NWSL shouldn't be doing this? No, because it's bigger than one player. But does it hurt? Yeah. And without knowing the reasoning, that's the part that maybe why she's doing it. And it's not that she owes it to because the league allowed players to make that decision on their own. They left it very open-ended. But it does hurt. So it's a different conversation than MLS, because on the MLS side, they have to be approved. Yeah. Here, you can opt out. And without knowing why, we're all kind of wondering. So I would assume, because this has now come out in French, from America reported it and it's spreading around, that you'll have or Megan Rapinoe today to address it.
And I'm still looking forward to watching it from one end to the other, as much as I can squeeze multiple monitors here into Office HD. It is a big absence, especially for the first element for OL Reign to be out there as an entity. I mean, we all know about Reign FC and what it has been for the NWSL, but you know that Lyon and the ownership group would have liked to have had a lot of the big guns out there for their first activity in the NWSL. So just waiting to hear the details if you come.
All right, a couple random things that I want to get to this morning. We're going to get to more about MLS here in just a minute. Different fundraising opportunities that are out there for clubs. DeKalb County United, who I know we have listeners today and we have hardcore listeners who follow the club, they're doing a fundraiser Saturday, June 6th. Similar to what we saw Greenville Triumph do, where it's like a match, but it's a fundraiser for community groups and community activities. So DeKalb County United, check out what they have going on Saturday. I think the Triumph are actually another round of that coming up later in June. You've seen other clubs find ways to do it. South Georgia Tormenta announced that they would be working with, I believe it's the South Georgia NAACP, or the Bullitt County chapter.
Bullitt County chapter.
Bullitt County chapter of the NAACP on initiatives going forward. And I think this is a big part of what American soccer is doing to respond to all of this. You know, whether we're talking police brutality, whether we're talking racist things going on in communities, whether we're talking coronavirus issues, American soccer at all levels, top level, MLS, Don Garber has talked about how we've done a lot. We're going to do more going forward. USL teams, NPSL teams, NWSL teams, NPSL, USL League One, USL League Two, UPSL, local community clubs and local regional leagues. Everybody is finding a way to impact their circle. Some teams have big circles. Some teams have small circles. You can still have an impact. And it's very cool to see all of the different things that are happening around. And it needs to continue. It needs to grow. There can always be more. You can never have two meetings like this. But that's been one element of what teams have done during this stoppage of play that's been pretty inspiring. And I think it's only going to become more inspiring as we have, more and more ways to do it.
Yeah, and it's been really cool for me to go rolling through the timeline and sit there and see a team do that, another team do that, reaching out in this way, another team doing something. All these elements come together, and it goes back to the discussion we had in the first hour about the impact that you can have, not just being an MLS franchise, but you mentioned all the different leagues, and we know all of the different communities that are impacted by soccer at a level. To continue to see things like this roll through, it really is a cool thing to see, especially with how hard it is for us right now dealing in a global pandemic. But you still have all of these efforts and all these reach outs that you have from all of these teams, all these organizations in the community.
And there's more to do, and we'll keep you posted on all of those things as they come up. Let's run around England real quick. Different things have come up this morning. We mentioned Jurgen Klopp's comments about face masks and having a little extra level of responsibility for his players to make sure that they're staying safe and also not bringing things back. Matt Hughes and Samuel at the Daily Mail have talked about the solidarity situation financially in England, and there is a solidarity fund. It's always been there. 110 million pounds in payments to struggling clubs. There's actually talk that could be cut back. There is a lot of back and forth as to what that truly looks like. The Premier League have not offered EFL clubs any additional financial assistance, although their plan with the government to come back from the shutdown included that. They were told that providing a rescue package was a prerequisite for returning to action. The Premier League's board acknowledged that demand, but they suggested that their offer to advance 50% of next season's £110 million payments to struggling clubs and to keep the fees at pre-COVID-19 levels, that should be the rescue package. It's not quite how it works. It's not a rescue package if you're doing what you already did. That's not really doing anything additionally. Does it mean that Premier League clubs are above having problems themselves? No, not at all. That's just not true. But we're seeing big clubs in other countries, and Germany and the Netherlands have went above and beyond with big four clubs creating a solidarity package for teams that get below them. So the Premier League's plan, if the current season is curtailed, and that's not the plan right now, but if it happens, that they would then cut their solidarity payment next year by 25%. So lower division teams are a little worried. They've left it open to the possibility of choosing to help in the future, but they haven't started any talks. They said, should the clubs wish to offer any additional financial assistance to EFL clubs, discussions will need to take place at a later date. Okay. I don't know how this is going to get resolved. The solidarity payment that is in place, that has been in place, this is how it works. £110 million. $4.5 million for every championship club. $675,000 for each League One club. $450,000 for each League Two club. That's not parachute payments. That goes across the board every year, coming from the Premier League down. You could call that a solidarity payment. I don't really remember it being called a solidarity payment before.
Yeah.
That was probably part of the negotiated settlement for the Premier League clubs separating from the Football League back in the day. If you're going to do that and you're going to keep more money, then you still have to share some. And that's what they've done. If it's going to be reframed as a solidarity payment, it's a completely different situation. And there are 6 championship teams that get parachute payments between £15 million and £42 million, depending on when they relegated. Huddersfield Town, Fulham, and Cardiff would really suffer if the season gets stopped in the Premier League, because the Premier League would demand a proportion of the parachute payment.
Yep.
So if the Premier League doesn't finish the season, they're going to go back and say, hey, guys who just got relegated, give us some money back. Are you serious?
Mm-hmm.
Are you serious
Yeah.
with this nonsense? Come on.
Mm-hmm.
That's absurd to me.
Yeah.
The EFL clubs are not happy, obviously. One thing about this Daily Mail piece that jumped out to me, because we've talked about match day revenue. Match day income makes up around 25% of income across EFL clubs, and a far greater percentage in Leagues 1 and League 2, compared to 15% in the top flight. My question is, and I think this is some of the difference between the way match day revenue is talked about here and there, if you have sponsorships that are tied to match day activities, is it falling in match day income in England? Because if they're saying across the EFL 25%, it's a higher percentage at lower division teams. It feels like maybe they're talking sponsorship that has game day components separate in a whole different bucket. Here, I think when Jeff Birding talks about Cincinnati and says it's 90%, he's including sponsorship into it that might not all be affected by game day activities not happening or being because it's probably somewhere in between the two. Reality. I mean, you're going to be able to tweak some things and make some things work, but 15% in the top flight for match day revenue in the Premier League, the TV revenue is gigantic, and that's a big reason why that's the case. Financial issues affecting Tottenham, and Tottenham did have to take out a loan, £175 million from the Bank of England. You had to meet a ton of criteria to qualify for the UK COVID corporate financing facility. It's unsecured loan, repayable in full at a rate of 5%. It gives you financial flexibility, working capital. The only other club that could qualify for this possibly is Manchester United. It's because you have to have an investment-grade credit rating, the highest level of credit rating. And Manchester United has a formal credit rating from an agency. They might be the only other one that does, according to The Athletic. And this is from David Ornstein and Jack Pitt-Brooke. So Tottenham's been able to do this. They have to repay it in April of 21, which is quick, unless they redraw it for another year. Basically, this is going to give you flexibility without knowing what happens with revenue and when revenue's coming and what all that looks like. This is going to give you some serious flexibility. Tottenham is one that has been especially hit by this because they were expected to really raise their revenues being in the new stadium. And they're going to take a hit on that. Also, this is not going to affect their transfer budget. This is only going to be for working capital. The club will not have a budget for signings unless they sell players. That's it. That's according to The Athletic. Now, let's go down to the EFL real quick. This meeting keeps getting pushed back. It was supposed to be this week. It's been pushed back now. It's going to be Monday. Now it's Tuesday to discuss these new proposals suggested by clubs on how to finish the Championship, League One, and League Two. League Two said they're not playing. League One is split. Championship says they're playing. There's still a bunch of proposals about how that looks, what that looks like, what if it gets curtailed looks like, how you decide on points per game, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. League One, the longer you go, the less likely it is you're going to play. That's just flat out. And Gillingham manager Steve Evans is fired up about this. He said, I just want him to stop P***, G, about.
I think we figure out what it is.
I don't know if that would necessarily, I think it's like a curse here. I
Yeah.
don't think it would.
No.
But I'm gonna go with the stars for now.
Okay.
He says, make your decision. Our chairman said to me this week that he will be getting his Christmas lights up before this happens. Our chairman is right. The Christmas lights are going up soon. Let's try and
Well, I
play
was gonna
football
say,
again
some
before we
stores
put the
do
Christmas
that.
lights up.
Some stores do that in August these days.
It's June. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but that's okay. We need some clear leadership from the Football League. It should be implemented by now. 100% agree with all that. The chairman said last week that he thought it would be unaffordable to carry on. Evans, the manager, has said, I've always said I want football. My chairman is probably leaning towards a different view now because of the costs. He said, the people above me have always done the finance. My job is to build the team and win football matches. I would love an opportunity and a crack at the last 9 games if I had my players available. If that is not to be the case, I respect the decision. If it's to play on, then let's get back on the field. Don't keep putting it off. He also talked about what we mentioned earlier this week about Wickham, their player on loan from Millwall, Jason McCarthy. They can't afford to keep him. The loan players at Gillingham have gone back to their clubs as well, according to Evans. I don't see League One coming back. Every delay has made this worse. I don't see League One playing. But then how do you decide what you're going to do with a playoff? Because for me, it's even worse. If you're going to say that we can't come back because of cost, but we're going to come back to do a playoff, that's even more of a waste for the teams that don't win the playoff. And I don't think you need to take that on right now. But I don't know what you're going to do because teams want that opportunity to get promoted. Most do. Not all, because some are going to look at the real financial realities here. I don't know. But League Two said they're not coming back. League One, I don't see it now at all. Championship, they're coming. I don't know if they necessarily need to. That's the thing. I don't know if it's going to be good for them financially to do it. But the longer it goes without these decisions and without these things being put down on place, come on.
Yeah. I have, and then speaking of League One, twit of the day.
Okay.
Sunderland.
Yeah?
They're a twit today. Why
is Sunderland a twit?
The franchise, not any particular individual.
The whole club. You're calling all of them a twit. They are a club.
I'm calling the front office a twit.
The front office is a twit. That's very different.
Yes, the front office is a twit.
Okay.
Sunderland currently 7th, just outside of the playoff picture in League One by goal difference, and there's no chance for them, unless you get back and you really start wiping people out. You're 12 behind in goal difference to Peterborough to get you into the promotion playoff.
Well, how many points are you out?
You're even on points, but you're 12 back in goal difference.
Yeah, but you're even on points.
Yeah.
Yeah, you absolutely have a chance. You win and they lose, you're in.
You got to make up 12 goals if you stay
No, you don't. If you win and they lose, you have more points.
Right.
So then goal difference doesn't really matter.
If the season stops today.
If the season stops today, that's a very different conversation. So what does Sunderland want to do?
Okay, and this is a Q&A with fans that they had on their website.
Mm-hmm.
Question. This is courtesy of Ed Mallion at Athletic UK.
Okay.
Question from fan. If the 2019-20 season is completed behind closed doors, it was stated that supporters will not receive a refund and instead be entitled to a streaming pass. Mm-hmm. If a supporter does not want or cannot access a streaming pass, are they able to obtain a refund or an alternative voucher, such as retail? Answer. Should the season be completed behind closed doors, season card holders would be automatically entitled to a streaming pass only. No further refund will be provided either by way of cash or voucher. Mm-hmm. Follow-up. Will home and away fixtures be included in the streaming pass? Answer. The streaming pass will only include home games only and represent the games included within the corresponding season card. Streaming passes will be available to purchase separately.
Okay, what part is being a twit?
If you can't access it, if you can't have any access from a streaming pass, say you can't access for whatever reason, your demographic and you don't have a computer or it doesn't work or whatever. The idea that you would only get a streaming pass and there's no alternative if you can't access streaming, to me, it's like, come on, give a little here for your fans that might not necessarily have access to things one way or the other. I think that there has to be some give and take on this. And if it's a stream pass only, I understand the notion of the home and away part because the away side needs to happen as well. I get that.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do with that.
Nothing to do about home and away. I get that. I'm specifically talking about the notion of giving a little to keep a little in the idea of, it's like, if you can't do something, then help them out here a little bit. Either give them a refund or give them something else to keep the goodwill of that particular fan. Just don't tell them no, flat out. No, this is the only way that this is happening.
Yeah, I'm completely with you on that. The away part of it, that has nothing to do with this. Because if you buy a home season ticket, you're not getting away tickets. If you buy a home season ticket and you're getting a home streaming pass, that's what you get. You can't get money from the other team. Like that part doesn't have anything to do with it. The other part is something that let's have to figure out right now because this is multifaceted. For a bigger team who is not at risk of going out of business, there's no question. You get it done and you figure it out, whether it rolls over to the next season, whether it's a credit, whether it's a refund. You have to find the best way forward. But when you see smaller businesses or businesses that are in trouble start to talk and act this way, generally it's because they can't afford to give money back.
Yep.
And that's a fear. That's something that needs to be understood. Doesn't make it right. Don't get me wrong. I mean, if you had I'm trying to think of the proper example. Probably like a department store would be the best thing. If you had a gift card, let's say, at a department store that was going out of business and they didn't have anything that you wanted and there's nothing for you to buy there because they've already gotten rid of a lot of stuff and you want to refund that gift card and they say no, well, they probably can't afford to give you the money. And that's what worries me about Sunderland here, is to be that cold about it. Is there a bigger issue behind the scenes than we know about? If there isn't, then you're just being a twit. If there is, and it's very possible that there is,
especially with Sunderland,
then maybe you need to go ahead and say that. Maybe you need to go and say, like, look, I think the best approach in this situation is to say fairly, we need your support at this time. We have no revenue coming in. If there is no other solution that we can come up with and we are able to, we will refund your season ticket. Otherwise, we are trying to find ways to accommodate you with tickets in the future, but also support now, et cetera, et cetera. You have to manage it better. But my take when I heard that was, financials are really bad. Because you're going to take a public hit when stuff like that comes out. You're not going to do it unless you have to. Do you have to?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know where that falls. one thing about fans in the stands that we need to talk about in Hungary. Sean Walker of The Guardian reported on the Hungarian Cup final yesterday. Honvéd won 2-1. First big game in Europe to be played in front of paying spectators. Big game. There's been some games in the Hungarian league played behind very small crowds. 10,000 fans allowed into the 65,000-seat stadium. I'm going to read from the article. While social distancing regulations meant spectators had to sit 4 seats apart from each other, hardcore fans ignored their ticket numbers to gather behind the goals. At the whistle, hundreds of Honvéd fans jumped and cheered in close proximity in scenes that may prove controversial if there is any spike in the country's coronavirus numbers in coming weeks.
Yep.
Just like the players have a responsibility to follow the protocols, to do these things safely, when fans are allowed in buildings, they have a responsibility too.
Yep.
And we will see if there's an issue here. There might not be. Don't get me wrong. There might not be. Hungary had, as of yesterday, 3,931 active coronavirus cases, 534 deaths of COVID patients. I think at times, and maybe it's just because of following this a decent bit, when you put those two numbers into the same sentence, they're not necessarily related to the same thing we're talking about. The active cases is the more important element right now. The active hospitalizations is a very important element right now. It's not to diminish the deaths. They have not had a lot of deaths. They're also a small country. I don't know what that percentage is. I don't know if that is a large percentage per capita. I don't know. But the immediate number that you have to follow is how active is the disease in the country, how many people are hospitalized right now, and can those things grow because of this? There were rules coming into it, temperature checks outside the stadium. You had to wear a mask. You had to keep a distance of 4 seats. That stuff all got thrown out once again. That's a failure of the stadium security. It's a failure of the stewards, and it's a failure of the supporters for not taking on the responsibility of doing this the right way. If there is an issue coming out of this, I really, really hope that American sports is paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling they won't be. I have a feeling they will brush it off as, that's Hungary, that's not us.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
People act like people. And you get into the event, and if you don't have stewards, if you don't have people saying, you have to keep your mask on in here, there is no way around it. You have to keep the distance. No. If you just back off, well, we'll see what happens coming out of it. But keep this in mind, that this happened, and we will see if things change. In Hungary, you've had shops and restaurants reopening. There's still strict travel restrictions. There's a ban on entrance into the country for everyone but citizens and permanent residents. So they're probably at the same place most places are. But they went ahead and did this. 10,000 fans. It's the largest crowd since it started. And people didn't follow the protocols in place. We'll see if that has an alter. A couple other nuggets real quick. Ecuador, their football association, has created a fund, a solidarity fund, to provide for testing for all of the 26 teams in their top 2 divisions. So the federation is going to pay for testing for those teams. We've talked about the cost of that, how that can be crippling to smaller clubs, especially when you're talking about second division Ecuadorian clubs. This is a big initiative, and this is a very good one to get them back on the right path. The Asian Champions League has not really figured out what things are going to look like in August when they're planning to resume yet. They had initially talked about doing all the remaining group games in one location for all teams. Now they're told they want to go back to the standard home and away. Well, you're going to have quarantines for some countries. And that's what's so hard about international travel at the moment. Australian clubs fear that they won't be able to play because in Australia there is a mandatory 14-day quarantine for incoming people. So you can't do a competition that way. Like, that's not going to work. So they can't host games. So then do they travel? Also, in the Asian Football Confederation statement, this is something to keep in mind in CONCACAF as well. Recognizing the travel and medical restrictions which differ across the continent, the AFC proposed a series of options for concluding the AFC Champions League before the start of the scheduled FIFA Club World Cup to be held in Qatar in December. That's still on the books. If that's still on the books, you're trying to finish Champions Leagues. CONCACAF would be part of that. Are they going to try to finish the CONCACAF Champions League? Are you going to see teams just forfeit? Just say, we can't do it. Yeah. Don't know. But that one surprised me a little bit. I thought FIFA might have stepped away from that by now. A big one in Japan. So Japan, their FA announced plans yesterday for a new women's club competition. It's called the WE League, the Women's Empowerment League. Round-robin competition would begin in autumn of 21. Participating teams will be announced later in the year. 6 to 10 teams. This is basically a new first division. No relegation from the top tier for several years, but they'll promote teams up to join the league. It will be the top flight above the already established Nadeshiko League. And one other element to it, the Japanese FA stipulated that at least one executive per club must be a woman, while females must account for at least half the employees at each team within 3 years. So they're creating a stronger first division, but also tying in elements of the front office to go along with the name, the Women's Empowerment League. That's unique. I haven't seen those types of goals set for what a front office looks like alongside of all this. So Japan, new first division. We'll see what happens with Megan Rapinoe here. We've got progress in other parts of the world. We've got questions in other parts of the world. Sweden is another one that is trying to get back to play on June 14th. There's been all kinds of back and forth. There's been a lot of point, like Sweden didn't do a lockdown, but now Sweden's saying maybe they should have done a lockdown because the deaths are more than they would have expected. They still have a ban on gatherings of more than 50 people. So they didn't do some of the things that others did, but they did do some of the things that others did. Hammarby, who had to announce wage cuts up to 20%, their worst-case scenario is losing between 5.5 and 5.9 million pounds in revenue. They do have a new TV rights deal in Sweden, and that's going to help some. And they're trying to figure out different things. Östersund is going to have a drive-in facility for teams to watch the games outside of the arena. So trying to find stuff, but Sweden's another one to keep an eye on as they try to get back here in the coming weeks. And one more, France, Onze Mondial reported that before the president, because this came from the French government about stopping the leagues, not the leagues deciding it. Before taking that final decision, President Macron consulted Marseille's president, the French national team coach, Didier Deschamps, and the French Federation president. He's a big Marseille fan, according to reports.
Okay.
Didn't talk to Lyon's president.
No.
Talked to Marseille's president. And
no dog.
Who benefited from the league stopping when it did? Who's going to be in Europe next year?
Not Lyon.
Not Lyon. This just gets weirder and weirder.
France.
I just don't get it. What are you doing, France?
All right, I've got one more note from England, and we got Twitter, and I know you wanted to get some MLS stuff, and Jeff Lorenowitz was on a media conference call this morning, transcribed, and gotten some quotes from Mike Conti from that.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd you like to go?
You call it.
All right, well, let's wrap up England and then work our way back before the end of the show. Plans for extra cameras and mics and things like that for the Premier League when they come back, extending access. Got the big X in the middle of the screen for most of it. Proposals for cameras in dressing rooms, mics in the technical area, player interviews at the half, all got rejected. and word should come out today. We've already heard some early stuff out of the Premier League about subs and things like that. The only significant change expected to be announced is the likely addition of an audio feed from the captain's coin toss and fixed camera in the tunnel, providing more pictures of the teams running out onto the pitch. So,
okay,
those are your additions for the Premier League.
Okay.
That's where that be with that. Did you watch the Costa Rican League last night?
A little bit of it. I was kind of tired. I didn't stay up for it.
Did you see that Saprissa did the big zoom monitor too?
No, they did. Very cool.
Yeah, they did it far left-hand side of the screen. They had the big zoom monitor with fans that they rotated in and out, so I thought that was very cool as well. So we have your MLS stuff, we have Twitter, and we have some folks on Twitter, and we've got Mike with his quick quotes from the Jeff Larinowitz conference call. You pick.
Let's touch on the MLS stuff real quick. We talked about the Dallas unnamed player testing positive. They have not had any training since Friday, and they didn't feel like this would be a concern for a spread within the team, but obviously you're going to do all the testing now to move forward. All teams are going to do that as they start to move forward to contact training, getting away from socially distanced training. Albert Ellis said on Honduran radio that he has received the largest contract offer in Houston Dynamo history to stay. Ellis is in a really tough spot because I think he had some good offers to go to Europe before. I don't know if those offers are going to materialize now. I don't know if teams are going to be willing to spend the same amount for him as they would have. This might be a better approach for him. It's a different game we're talking about at the moment. If he does have an opportunity to go, I think he's going to go, but it's good to see the Dynamo make a big commitment right now to try to keep him.
Yeah,
I know everybody's seen the LAFC situation at the moment. So it started with comments from Alexander Kai's wife that were reprehensible, disgusting, and were rightly called out. The LA Galaxy called them out incredibly strongly. Alexander Katai made a statement this morning about it that was pretty strong. I don't know what the resolution's going to be. It's put him in a very difficult spot, and what's hard about it is he didn't make the statements, and it's a little hard to punish him for them, but I don't know what the resolution's going to be. You cannot jump to a conclusion that because his wife said something that he would have said it. You can't do that.
Right. Yeah.
But I don't know what the resolution's going to be for him and for the club. The responses to his statement were really negative and some really uncalled for as well. So this is going to be a major issue for the Galaxy to deal with off the field. I think so far the club's done what they can do. I don't know what you're going to get to actually resolve it at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if you're going to be able to continue with him in the team. And that's the concern. And again, you can't jump to the conclusion that because she said something, he would have said it. But is it going to be a good place for him to be after this? Is it going to be a good relationship for the club to have with him because of this? It's really difficult. I don't know. I don't know how this is going to play out.
No. And after seeing a couple of the screenshots of what Alexander Katai's wife posted on Instagram, disgusting was the first word that popped into my brain, and you just sit there and shake your head and you go, really? Okay. But yeah, to your point, I don't know what the end result is going to be with the Galaxy, knowing that there's going to be fallout, collateral and otherwise, with fans and all that kind of stuff. So, long day for Alexander Katai and the Galaxy yesterday.
Yeah. It's funny that we talked about MLS trying to deal with challenges technically moving forward, because our connections have been crap today. It's like the technical gods decided to punish us for even discussing it. So thanks for people who have hung out with us. I know that's been part of the comments, but what else are folks saying on Twitter?
All right. Let's see. Nathan Pugh, in addition to everything else that he put for the show this morning, said, up the Reds, John, #Scouse.
Yes. There you go.
Yes.
Good job.
Yeah. Tafka, after what you were discussing in hour number one, says that he doesn't, rightfully so. I don't understand the argument either. Those players may be safer than the average cautious total bubble protection. It's not just that fans may forget MLS if they end the season. It's the fact they'd lose a massive launching pad for more interest. MLS will be the only sport for a month after having no sports at all, plus a unique tourney. What an opportunity.
I think the opportunity to attract new fans is much stronger than turning people off. And when you're facing $1 billion loss, you need to find space to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And if this is a way to do it, again, doing all of it very, very safely, you have to find the way to do it. And that's what the league and the players have agreed to do. I don't know why it's being questioned in the way that this article, this op-ed, was questioning it.
Joey Logan says, for once, MLS will be the spotlight. No other major sports leagues playing in the United States, along with the NWSL, will bolster to a prominent league in under 3 years.
It's a big opportunity for soccer. I mean, it's a huge opportunity for soccer because both the professional leagues in this country will be back before anybody else, and that is going to help. I've noticed little things in the last few days, and maybe it's because ESPN is desperate for things to talk about, but I'm seeing MLS mentioned more alongside the major leagues, whether it was the lockout threat or the fact that they're coming back. They're right there with everything else. This is going to help that. So it is an element of, again, with ESPN as well. I mean, you're going to be negotiating a new media rights package in the coming years. You're doing a solid for one of your existing partners and the biggest potential suitor for media rights for you in your next deal. This is playing things the right way, in my opinion. I think you're doing the right things.
Jay Kalani says he's excited, but those first few games are going to be some awkward soccer all around the league.
It can be, but as we said about the first week in the Bundesliga, was it at 100% pace? No. Were there some tactical things that were a little rusty? Yep. Were there compelling matches? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Were there stinkers? Yeah, because that's what it is every week. But were there compelling matches? Absolutely. So, yeah, I think this fear of like, well, it's not going to be every game being the best game you've ever seen. Well, that's every week in every league. So you just have to have as good of a quality as you can, and you also have to do these other little things that they're talking about doing to mitigate that. Whether it is more mics, more cameras, like they have said. I mean, Garber talked about the investment of just doing the Orlando event and the investment on the technical side that they're going to put forward to do this. You're trying to present it in a way that is compelling, and you have to, because the level of play might not be at 100% A+ for your product, but you can still make it entertaining.
Bartimus Prime's in this morning. He says he has 3 questions, which turned into 4.
Well, that's how it goes.
What type of training can Atlanta United do now?
Now they can do socially distanced group training. That was the step that MLS talked about last week. On Sunday, it was announced that Atlanta and Kansas City were the only 2 teams that had submitted the plans on how to do it that were approved. I'd assume there's been a few others since then. It is essentially what they did before, where it was individual training in your own space on the field. It's the same thing, except the amount of spacing between groups is decreased a little bit. It's 10-foot difference now between where the players are, but you can interact with people in separate squares on the field, essentially, as long as you maintain the 10-foot difference. There's no contact, there's no tackling, there's no real team training, but you can work in small groups and maintain social distancing.
And start full training.
Don't know. You got to do testing first. Before you can get to full training, I think there will be small group training that will have contact. To get to contact, you have to do testing. That's how it's gone everywhere in the world. I would think it's going to be the same here. That hasn't been announced yet. We know that on Monday there was a plan to do testing, at least in Atlanta. I don't know if that was the plan across the league. With Dallas's positive test, they've obviously done some testing. You have to do whatever the testing league is requiring to do contact training, and I think there will be a week, probably no more than a week, maybe, at most 10 days, of small group contact training once testing is implemented.
When must Atlanta United report to Orlando?
That's up in the air, because Atlanta would be one that would be able to train here until going. They don't have to go there to do all the above on training. So they could go as late as you're allowed to go, and we don't know what that is. We don't know when the start date is yet. So we're kind of working backwards. I think for teams that cannot train in market, in full team training, can go to Orlando as early as June 24th is what has been reported. MLS hasn't announced those details yet on the Orlando tournament plan.
And it's a question for you about competitive advantages, and you talked about this on Stoppage Time yesterday with Mike a little bit. What competitive advantages will Atlanta United have due to the longer training, even individual, that it has had?
Depends on what they've done with it and how much, how good theirs has been compared to others. That's the part we won't really know until we see. I don't think it should give you much of a competitive advantage. I think players might be a little bit sharper individually, especially if they've taken advantage of it. But it shouldn't give you anything more than a little bit better level of fitness, things that players could have done on their own. It shouldn't give you, any kind of tactical advantage because you haven't done anything tactically. Maybe you're just a little bit further along in sharpness on the ball, things like that. But these are things that players could have done on their own as well. I've always felt like this level of training, this individualized training, was more about getting players comfortable with protocols and understanding what other training was going to look like, in the sense of bringing a water bottle, bringing your gear, dressing before you come, washing your equipment, all those kinds of things. You're just a little more comfortable with that level of protocol because you've been doing it.
A couple of updates on dates and looking at some of Mike's notes from the Jeff Larunowitz conference call. Mm-hmm. Jeff confirms teams that cannot train in their home markets will report to Orlando on June 24. Teams that can train in their home market, like Atlanta United, can arrive a week later. Says the tournament will start July 9.
Okay. And from what we had been hearing, that's been pushed back a couple days, which is reasonable because you lost a couple days in training. So July 9 is a Thursday?
I can check real quick. It sounds right. Doing my math quickly for calendars.
Yeah. It's
okay, so it's a Thursday.
So, okay. That's when it would start. I don't think everybody would play on that day. You'd probably see teams play first games Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then if it's 4 days apart, which is something that's been said, that's the plan going forward. And Jacob Myers at the Columbus Dispatch, in case you haven't seen it, said that after Orlando, the idea was 8 more regular season games, 9 home, 9 away.
Yeah. Rich Ransom says at this point, MLS coming back at all is better than not. Viewers should at least adapt to the new normal of the TV show aspect of this.
Yeah, and where that's going to be different, it's also going to create some opportunities. And if teams and television partners find ways to get you to know these guys a little bit better, you're going to have the space to do that where you didn't have it before. So players' personalities are going to come out a little bit more. There can be some advantages to this if you take them and if you find them. So it's not all negative. I really do not see the argument that it would be better not to come back. And Caitlin Murray's not the only one who said that. There's been a lot of leading American soccer voices who have said, for whatever reason, they shouldn't come back because of safety, because of the quality of the product, because you won't have fans in the stands. I mean, name the reason that it's out there. I think coming back is key because of all the other things we've talked about. I think it's key for, the platform that MLS has in the soccer world, the platform it has in this country, the platform it will now have with a strong media partner like an ESPN. I mean, if ESPN is producing all of this and really going, whole hog into it, you think they're not going to be putting it on everything? I mean, you think maybe we do get Stephen A. Smith yelling about MLS? That would be amazing.
Can you believe the Red Bulls and their press yesterday?
I want the morning game to finish and then go to Stephen A. and have him talking about Chris Armas or whatever. It needs to happen.
I am having a very bad day.
See,
could you believe that we
about
saw
the New York team
in the game down there in Orlando? What we saw was a complete and total travesty for Major League Soccer.
No, he doesn't need to be like. No, he's not going to be like that. That's the difference. He needs to be like that about New York, about New York City. He can be angry about New York City. You're not going to have a travesty for MLS, for Major League Soccer, John, because then you're going back to join the other party about American soccer stinks. No, Stephen A. doesn't need to do that. So let's talk to Stephen A. Let's make sure he gets bought in with the team. He can get all riled up. He can troll everybody about the other teams. Man, somebody go sit down with Stephen A. and have this conversation. Pick a team, be that homer, antagonize their rivals. Do it. Come on, Stephen A.
I just want to hear him talking about Tati Castellanos.
I want to see Stephen A. do what he does about the Dallas Cowboys with MLS. Have fun with it and also be that Stephen A. guy. Do it. Do it. If MLS has this opportunity right now, that's huge. That's huge. Take it. Get Stephen A. on board. Get all these talking heads yelling about it. Get Feinbaum down there. Get Feinbaum talking about Atlanta United. Get these things happening. You've got a window here. Take full advantage of it.
Orlando ain't making the playoffs again, Paul.
Oh, I need this to happen. I need Paul taking calls about Atlanta United. Needs to happen. I need a debate between Paul and Stephen A. for the final of this thing with Atlanta playing in New York City. I need it to happen. Come on. Let's do this, ESPN.
And then Max Kellerman right there in the middle of all of it, poking
Max
both of them.
Max can pick a team, too. Max needs to pick a team, and he can be a homer about them. He's a New York guy, too, though, isn't he?
Yeah, so then whichever team in New York Stephen A. does, that's what I'm saying. He picks one, Stephen A. picks the other.
So he can pick Red Bull, so you can go there. You're good to go. Let's really do this. We're going to do it. ESPN needs things to talk about. They're going to have things to talk about. We need some controversy. We need some controversy creates cash. Get Eric Bischoff booking this thing. Let's do it. Come on.
As long as it's not Vince Russo booking it.
I didn't say anything about Vince Russo.
Darren Eales is now speaking to the media, says small group training is in progress at the training ground, says he's seen his first shot on goal in 5 months.
Small group training, distanced.
Yes.
It's very important. Distanced.
Yes.
I know we had Tactical Thursday. It's going to be some kind of Tactical Friday because of our technical difficulties and all the madness today. I'm sorry for that. We will hold all tactical questions till tomorrow.
Let's see. We have a lot of folks on Twitter this morning because of everything that we were fired up about. You got Tafka hot this morning.
Well, that's good, I guess.
He says, creating a new fan is not hard, especially a young fan. I had a talented 9-year-old on my rec team. His mom asked me what more he could do with soccer because he'd come to love soccer so much with me. I gave her my Atlanta United keychain to give to him and told her to tune in that night at 8 o'clock for the Atlanta match. He fought to stay up and watch the match. He slept on the couch to do so that night. He's now a huge fan with jerseys and gear. It's that easy. It doesn't have to be England.
Yep. It doesn't have to be Mexico. It doesn't have to be Germany. It doesn't have to be Spain. It doesn't have to be Italy. It can actually be MLS. And if you care about the league, it's kind of on you to spread the word like that and to talk to people about it in your soccer circle. Because, look, I mean, John Michaels, said this about the NBA and MLS. I think this would be the accurate thing if you took MLS out of it about MLS dragging their heels. He said, want to turn away a bunch of fans talking about Major League Baseball? Keep arguing about money. Like, baseball's going to take a massive hit regardless of if they come back now, because they've wasted so much time and they've created so much animosity. And if they don't come back, all the things that were said about MLS, well, should you come back? Should you do this? Should you do that? Watch what happens to baseball. Watch what happens, because people are going to turn off in a big way. And baseball's got over a century of history. MLS doesn't have that. People would have turned away faster. So I think they're doing the right thing, and I think they're doing it in a safe way. Don't get distracted by some of the other stuff out there. You still have to pay attention to safety. You still have to pay attention to protocols. You still have to pay attention to what is being done to do it in the right way. But the idea of you can't do it, I disagree with.
Yeah. Matt Warenzak, who came in this morning, says the Braves move to Cobb County killed my interest in baseball like the strike did for us.
Yeah, and there's stories like that too. I mean, for me, it was the strike. The move to Cobb. I mean, I think it was pretty disingenuous the way it was handled on the Cobb side and on the city of Atlanta side. It was bad all the way around, and that was just a kind of final thing. I haven't been to the new park. And what's funny is, even with my, like, you know, I'm not like anti-baseball. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like, you know, crusading against it.
I'm more of a minor league guy now these days anyway.
I'm not engaged in it at all, period.
Yeah.
I'm just not engaged. I watched a Braves playoff game here and there. I watched Game 7 of the Cubs and Indians because it was Game 7. It was a big, compelling thing. I watched a few games here and there, but that's about it since 1994. I was even to the point where I was like, man, I kind of like this new Braves team. I like these young guys. I like these young stars. I'll go to a game this year sometime. That was what I was thinking at the beginning of the year. And now, after this, I'm again just kind of like, man, they almost sucked me back in to at least go see a game, and I don't even care at this point because everybody's being stupid about it.
Yep. Two more on Twitter before we go. Joey Logan says there will always be Euro snobs. Support a team across the world, but not their local lower league team. Shake my head.
And you can support both. I think that's the other element that is goofy about it. You can have a team in Europe that you love and you support and you watch and you go out of your way to watch. There's nothing wrong with that. You can have teams in different leagues and support. That's what's beautiful about this. You can have a team in Spain that you care about, alongside a team in Italy that you care about, alongside a team in Germany and England that you care about. And you can have your local team. It doesn't have to be only one team and that's all. And no, you can't have more than two teams' shirts in your drawer or you're a bad fan. Stop. You can love the game and you can have teams that you care about and teams that you care more about than others. You can have all of those things. That's what's awesome about a worldwide game. You know, I mean, I have teams that I care about more than others in pretty much every league in the world. So if they're playing and I can watch it, probably going to watch it, you know? But also in the United States, you can do both. You can be a fan of MLS and you can actually be a fan of your local team if you're in a smaller market. You can be a fan of a USL team. You can be a fan of an NPSL team, a UPSL team, a local community club. You don't have to be this, okay, my local city has a team in UPSL. No! Don't be that guy or girl. Just love the game. If you don't love MLS, that's fine too. But don't waste your time on things you don't love. Like, yelling about things you hate is just stupid. It's just a dumb waste of time in the soccer world. You don't like a bigger team. You don't like a team in a certain country. You don't like a certain style of play. Cool. That's fine. But you can like more than one team. It is okay to do that in a game that is worldwide like this. It is okay. It doesn't make you a bad fan. The fan police, the supporters police are not going to come find you, no matter how many people yell about it on Twitter.
And a couple things from Nathan Pugh to catch us up. Tom Russo has a question which I'm going to hold over till tomorrow.
Okay.
Has to do with World League rankings. So
cool. Okay.
He had his top 12, and so I'll put it out there for everybody, and they can pay attention to that.
Right.
Nathan says, in a hashtag snob rant for every Orlando, there's a Bournemouth or West Brom or Stoke or Sunderland or Everton. And then he also mentioned that, quoting Paul Feinbaum, in your alternate universe,
Yes.
Alabama will win MLS Cup.
Well, no, I mean, that's not going to happen. Maybe he becomes a Birmingham Legion fan in USL Championship. I'd be down for that. I just think it could be really interesting to see how they handle this. You know, I mean, get Twellman on with First Take. That could be a blast.
What are we doing?
Get Alejandro Moreno on with First Take. That could be awesome.
Vamos Venezuela!
I mean, you've got some big personalities that you can incorporate into your other sports shows where soccer doesn't get talked about a ton. But, I mean, I'm just looking right now because I left SportsCenter on from this morning, and the scroll has been going, and I've seen the news we talked about with Tottenham and the loan that they took out and the potential losses that they're facing. I've seen the Alexander Katai conversation pop up. It's right there with everything else right now in the ESPN world. And go ask a hockey fan about how important the ESPN world is to being taken seriously in the grand scheme of American sports. It is still a big deal.
Yeah.
And this is a huge opportunity, and I see it right now. The modified CBA being approved, season expected to return with a tournament in Orlando, players expected to arrive in Orlando in 3 weeks. This is during First Take. They're talking about the NBA right now because that plan should be announced later today, but it's on the screen, it's on the scroll. Now get it into the conversation on a show like First Take and on SportsCenter more and all these other shows where you can do it and really push hard. MLS, I hope part of the deal with doing this with ESPN and Disney would be some of those things to happen. You know, we have The Jump for the NBA. We have NFL Live. They got rid of the baseball show for the most part. Can we get a soccer show for a month? Can we get a whatever you want to call it? Get a soccer show on ESPN for the next month to lead up to this with this type of conversation. Is it the conversation that I love every day? No, it's not. I mean, sometimes it's manufactured argument for the sake of manufacturing an argument. But you can't tell me that people don't pay attention to Stephen A. Smith. I pay attention to him because his head is bobbing around the TV screen right now. I want to know what he's yelling about. He's an entertaining cat, and he works hard. I want him talking about MLS. Because people who don't pay attention to MLS. This is my question, and I think Atlanta has shown this. I don't think my hypothesis is wrong in this. Who is more likely to become a fan of Major League Soccer or a Major League Soccer club? A Euro snob or an American sports fan who watches First Take, watches NBA, watches American football, watches these types of shows? I think it's the latter. By far. But most soccer people would argue to the death with you that it's the other. And I don't think that's the case. I think Atlanta has shown you that. How many new fans has Atlanta created who are not hardcore soccer fans? A ton. That's why Atlanta's drawing like they do. That's why our radio ratings are what they are. That's why Atlanta is Soccer City, USA. Seattle, Portland, others, that's why they are not in that, because they have not gotten out of the soccer bubble. Their soccer bubble was bigger. That's fine. That's fine. Who's going to do more for the game in the long term? Grow the thing. Stop worrying about Euro snobs. Stop worrying about people who are already in the game and have already checked out on the league. They're missing out. That's fine. Talk to people who are looking for something new, who are annoyed by baseball being stupid, who are fans of their local NBA team or their local NFL team or their local college football team. you talk about soccer in those areas where those sports are talked about, you will see an uptick in fans. Period. Soccer people in this country have to get over their own biases about sports fans. Sports fans will follow MLS if you give them a reason to. Mm-hmm. Got to give them a reason to. Part of that's something like this. Get on these shows, get things talked about. Not just your soccer people coming on the show and people not being engaged in it. Work to get these folks engaged in it. Work to get Stephen A. and Max and Molly and everybody who's on this show engaged enough to talk about it. That's going to have a more lasting impact than trying to appeal to a Euro snob.
Get 100% of the people that you can get instead of trying to work on a percentage of folks that you're not.
We have been hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, run amok, and flat out deceived.
Mm-hmm. What happened on that call was egregious.
Man, I need Stephen A. talking about soccer referees. That would be amazing. His head would explode.
Video assistant referee. I am all about VAR.
Needs to happen. Hopefully it does. Hopefully it does. MLS has taken on a big endeavor to get this done. They've got to do it right. They've got to do it right. It is a big moment for the league. It's an important moment for the league. And I am hopeful that they will find a way to make the most of it. We'll get more details, I would assume, by the end of the week about what the timeline looks like, what the schedule looks like. We talked about it on Stoppage Time. I want a draw show. You can have Stephen A. and Max run the draw show. That's fine. I don't care, whatever it takes. I want this to be a big deal and get people talking about MLS in this country. And I don't care if they're Euro snobs, if they're Liga MX snobs, if they're baseball snobs. I don't care. I want to get people engaged with this, and MLS is going to have that opportunity. Now they got to take it. Now they got to take it, and they got to make the most of it. We'll have plenty to talk about tomorrow. All your tactics questions we're carrying over to tomorrow. Hopefully we have nothing to rant about tomorrow morning. I would say I'm sorry about it, but I'm not, because I'm really...
Why should you?
I'm really frustrated at times with how we shoot ourselves in the foot in the American soccer world, and I hope that we stop doing that. So now's the time to reset that attitude. And it's on everybody who's involved in it. It's on all of us to do it. We've got to bring more people into the party, not check their credentials at the door to make sure they have the proper soccer vetting. No, I don't care. Come hang out. Come to the party. This could be a party for MLS, and I hope that they do it. We'll be back in the morning. We will have plenty to talk about then. If we missed anything, we'll cover it tomorrow. We'll get into all the tactics. We'll get into everything else that breaks as we go. Mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata, y'all.